Don't Depend on Daddy is an unfiltered safe space, empowering young professionals to build independence in their 20s and beyond, whether it be personal, professional, or financial. Regardless of your age, relationship status, or job title, the most consistent person in your life is you. So join me and let's build our independence together. Enjoy! Hello, and welcome back to Don't Depend on Daddy, the podcast. My name's Michaela. I am your host, and we are back today with our monthly Q&A episode. But this week, we are going to be doing a career-focused Q&A. I posted one of these a couple of weeks ago, or months ago now, and you seemed to love it. So we are back. We're going to answer some different questions. I've gotten a ton of career questions lately, and I do think that the podcast specifically is the best medium to answer these. So yeah, before we get into it, as always, I'll very quickly run through our usual housekeeping. So you can get $10 off the personal finance dashboard using the code podcast1. That is a podcast exclusive code. And if you are new here, the personal finance dashboard is my signature money management tool. So it is the tool that I created that helped me grow my net worth from negative $30,000 to over $1 million. It is, in my opinion, and honestly, I think you could fact check me on this, the most comprehensive tool on the market because it covers literally every single corner of your finances. You can take a financial snapshot, build out your budget, monthly, annual basis. You can set your different goals. You track all of your different numbers. You can monitor your net worth, pay off your credit card debt, pay off other types of debt. It's just a very comprehensive tool. So if you are interested in that, you can use the code podcast1 to get $10 off. Next is the basic budgeting template. So if you take a look at the PFD and you're like, whoa, this is a little bit too much for me, I would recommend checking out the basic budgeting template. It's more focused on building out just a budget and getting into the habit of budgeting. So if you're just getting started on your financial journey, I think that's a better tool. And last but not least, is the Financial Independence Planner. So this is a newer tool that I created earlier this year with the goal of really mapping out my personal plan to becoming work optional. And when I went and created the tool, I'm like, this is something that I feel like everybody needs to know. And the reason why I built it is because when I was calculating my FIRE numbers, I could not find a calculator online that gave me the insight that I was looking for. I just felt like a lot of the FIRE planners online were very confusing. And so this one is a lot more streamlined, and it will literally map out year over year over year your specific and exact plan to reaching your retirement targets, whether that be retirement later in life or becoming work optional like me. So I recommend the FIRE planner in addition to either the PFD or the BBT, totally up to you. The other thing I want to mention, just because we are coming up on Black Friday, if you're listening to this in the week that this goes live, I'm going to be putting all of these templates on sale and bundling them in different ways starting Sunday. So make sure you tune in to my Instagram because that is where I'm going to be sharing all of the codes and the updates of everything. So if you want to get them on sale beyond just the podcast one code and you're listening to this in the last week of November around Black Friday, Thanksgiving time, stay tuned because Sunday is when this is all going up. Okay, I'm going to move on now into the Q&A. So as I mentioned, I've gotten a lot of career questions lately. So we're going to be covering both lanes today, corporate stuff, because I know that so many of you who listen to the show work corporate jobs, but also we're going to start with some side hustle stuff too. And I won't just say content creator. We are going to cover other side hustles and freelancing as well because there is lots of opportunity to pursue a side hustle without being a content creator. I just think the really important nuancy thing to know is that if you are starting a business, the way people advertise is through content. So it's just the most cost efficient way to get in front of people, but it's not something that you necessarily have to do, but it will make your life a lot easier because that's where people are. They're on social media. So anyways, I'm going to be jumping all over the place today. I'll make sure that the questions are time-stamped in the description so you can see what I'm going to answer and you can jump around if you want. So with that, let's get right into it. So we're going to start off here. One of my most frequently asked questions is what should be my exit strategy from corporate, or I want to pivot away from corporate. Like, how do I do that? And I'm going to preface this by saying leaving corporate is not a simple thing to do, to be completely transparent. I think the internet has made it seem really easy. I've said this before and I'll say it again. It took me 3 years building a business in order to leave my corporate job. Like, it did not happen overnight. And honestly, it happened kind of by accident. But there are a few different paths that you can take, all of which are going to take time. So I really think it's important that even as I get into this, you understand the timeline, like deciding that you want to leave corporate. You got at least a year or two forward before realistically it's going to become possible. And other people online may have different opinions than that, but I truly believe if you want to build a business with legs, like you really do have to balance that with a corporate job for a while so that you don't leave prematurely. I talk about this in my book, actually, Own Your Career, which I'll also top off this episode right at the beginning by saying, if any of the things that we talk about today resonate with you, I highly recommend ordering my book, Own Your Career. You can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can listen to it on Spotify. It's a very valuable resource, and it's specifically written for people who are trying to navigate corporate, change careers, pivot, excel at work, potentially start a side hustle, all the things. So anyways, as I mentioned, I worked on Break Your Budget for almost 3 full years before I was able to quit my corporate job. And there is still a chance at some point that I could need to go back to one. Obviously, I'm doing everything in my power to avoid that because I really did not excel in a corporate environment. But in my mind, there are really 2, potentially 3 paths that you can take. So let's lay them out. The first path is early retirement and firing. So becoming financially independent earlier in your life where you can live off of your investments. This would mean that if you're working a traditional corporate job now and you don't have substantial investments or an inheritance or something, so most people, you would likely need to scale back your lifestyle pretty significantly, calculate your financial independence numbers, which you can do with the FIRE planner, and then follow that financial strategy specifically to reach early retirement. This path, in my opinion, is the hardest to do because it will likely require you to stay in corporate for quite a bit of time, but also because you really would likely need to make some substantial lifestyle sacrifices in order to get enough money invested early enough. And transparently, unless your job is paying you a lot of money, most people on just a traditional or typical corporate salary are not earning enough to invest enough early enough for this to be a truly feasible path. And I don't say that to discourage you, but if you are someone who genuinely wants to not work, which some people don't want to work, early retirement kind of is the only path, and it's not something that's truly accessible for most people. It's not even accessible to me. And I feel like I earn a pretty substantial income for my age and have been for a few years. And for me to retire early, I'd need to maintain this level for multiple more years in the future to never have to work again. And that's why I never say, I want to retire early. I just want to become work optional where I still plan to work, but I don't have to go back to a corporate job. So I know that's probably not what we want to hear, but it is the truth. And it's why, as I said, I often talk about becoming work optional, because work optional to me at least means you're still working, but you're not working a job that you hate. So if you want to calculate your path here, as I mentioned, you should definitely check out the FIRE planner because it will help you map out and conceptualize different financial independence scenarios for you based off of your specific current inputs. And then you can see okay, if I were to maintain this level of income, I could stop investing and reach coast-fi, and then I could change my job and go to something less stressful. Or if I were to stay in my job for 10 more years, I could invest enough money where then I could go totally FIRE. You just have to know what those numbers are in order to calculate out your FIRE path. And when you know what your FIRE path could look like, it will also help you prioritize some of your other financial goals. For me, in my mind, up until I ran my FIRE numbers, I was like, I'd like to buy property. I'd like to own a home, and at what expense? When I ran my FIRE numbers, I'm like, wait a minute. If I were to do that, it would extend my work journey exceptionally. So I'd rather have a few more years of renting and buy a house later and really secure my longer term financial future while I have the earning power to do so. So that is why knowing your numbers in this case is so helpful, especially if you want to leave the corporate path. I feel like the FIRE conversation really focuses on the financials, which obviously that's a big component of it. But when you know your FIRE numbers, you can then make different career decisions, and that's a very empowering thing to do. Okay, Second path is to start a business and use that as your avenue ultimately to earn money and quit your job. And now, when I say start a business, so many people think that the business has to be a content creator business. And yes, a content creator business is obviously an option and one that I would highly recommend if you're interested. And creating content can and will accelerate the process of building a business, 100% guaranteed. But it's not the only path to starting a business. You just need to think about where there is a market need that you can fill and how you'd get in front of those people. My recommendations here would be to look at what you enjoy doing at your corporate job. Pop that into ChatGPT. I've been really into chat lately. Nobody come at me for the ethics. We're all using it, so whatever. And talk to chat and map out some feasible freelance or consulting ideas. Like you could say, hey, I work in marketing and I love doing project management of these brand campaigns. How could I turn this into a freelance business? And they'll literally give you tons and tons of ideas. And then what you need to do is, once you figure out what the idea is that you're going to be working on, you need to start shooting your shot and pitching yourself to get some work. I think a lot of people are lost on where to get started with freelance work because the thought of getting that first client feels so unbelievably intimidating. And I totally understand because it kind of is. When I first started Break Your Budget, I was doing budgeting consults, and it actually took me 3 months to get my very first client. But once you get one, it becomes a lot easier to get more because you can get testimonials, you have experience, you know what resonates with people, you get a better understanding of what their problems are and how you can solve them. But you do need to be consistent with seeking out the opportunities for yourself. Like, they are not going to come directly to you, especially so if you are not interested in creating content. That is why so many people do create content, because it's a way, again, for you to get in front of people without having to like cold email them. So that means you'd need to use like LinkedIn to message people, or you could email people, or you could DM them on social. An example of this that's actually recent and relevant is I actually had someone who watches my YouTube videos send me an email, and he had made some enhancements to my renting versus buy template, which is a newer one that just came out, and provided some additional suggestions. And then he asked, if you're interested and you like these enhancements, like, let's get on a call. We'll talk about it. If there's other features that you like or other things you'd want me to do, this is what I thought would be great. I implemented some of them, but if you want to talk about the other ones, let me know. Kind of an open-ended, but he came forward with value. He did something without me asking him to do it. So we got on the call. He walked me through it. I was very impressed. And I want to highlight that he showcased to me clearly and with no intention of reciprocity, reciprocating. You know the word. I don't know. I can't talk. And it turned out to be a paid opportunity for him. And now he can use this as a case study. He can say he helped me. He has the tangible product to leverage to get more job opportunities if he wanted to pursue this as a business, like helping creators make templates, or helping businesses improve their Excel modeling. Like, that's a skill that a lot of people have and can monetize. So really, my point here is, don't be afraid to send the email. Don't be afraid to do a little work up front to help yourself stand out and show what you can do, because a lot of people don't really know what they need help for until someone presents it to them, and you could be that person to do that. So that's the second path, would be starting a business, ultimately scaling it to a point where it replaces your corporate income. And then the last path would be some type of like a hybrid part-time work and freelance work. So I have a friend actually who's planning to take Pilates teacher training and become a part-time Pilates instructor. And then she's also a copywriter, and she's going to supplement that with freelance copy work. Right now she works in social media. She doesn't really totally love it. And I think a lot of people who work corporate look down at part-time jobs, or don't really realize that a part-time job can be amazing in a different way. There are many, many paths to earning money besides working a corporate job, but you do have to have an open mind. You have to be willing to work, and at the beginning, probably work a lot more. But you could also explore this hybrid path as a potential later in life or midlife if you're able to substantially invest early in your 20s and your 30s. And that is why I think it's so important, A, to be really financially responsible as early as possible, but to B, calculate and know your fire numbers. Because if you know that, let's say by 40, you'll have enough money invested for retirement where you can retire at 60 and you don't have to invest anymore, you may not need to earn as much money, and then you can do something more hybrid or part-time like this. So again, this is why it's so important to know those numbers And I always say if I were to ever go back to a corporate job, it would only be because I've exhausted every single other option available to me. Like I would be a barista, I would work retail, I would get a Pilates instructor training done. Like I would do anything to avoid having to go back to corporate, and I'm willing to work if I need to. And I've really opened my mind to different career paths because I do think there are elements of corporate, and different personalities thrive in different environments, but there were elements of corporate to me that just made me feel horrible about myself, and it's not how I want to live. And so if you feel similarly, you own your career. That's what my book is called. You have to have the oomph to pick yourself up and figure out what your path is, what makes sense for you. You have to look at all of the numbers. You have to look at the different scenarios, and you have to be willing to work to get out of it. And when you see people online, myself included, who have built our own business and are making money outside of corporate, you have to remember I've been doing this now for almost 7 years. It has taken me a very long time to get to this point, and all good things take time. So I'll leave you with that. The next question here is, how do I build my network in a way that doesn't feel forced and fake? So I think when it comes to networking, the word gets in the way. Instead of networking, I would really think of it just as simply relationship building. In the same way you would aim to make a friend, when we think about relationships in the workplace, I feel like networking feels like we need to get something from someone, if that makes sense. And that obviously changes and influences the way that you operate and behave. So instead, when you're making new connections, I would really just view them as friends, but obviously with a professional lens, right? So how does this work? For example, let's say you're invited to a work event, a happy hour, a training session, whatever. Go to it. Okay, it is that simple. I know it sucks sometimes, but when you show up, you do reap the benefits of showing up, and set a goal to talk to 2 to 3 new people with no expectations, right? You can't go into networking conversations with the mindset of what is this person going to do for me? You want to operate as if you're just meeting a friend and you want to get to know them on a personal level, we'll say in air quotes, but you're obviously going to be talking about work stuff, and it is in a professional setting. So the goal is to approach the interaction and the conversation just totally normally, without this idea of this person is going to be in my network and they are going to help me do X, Y, and Z. People connect with people. And I feel like we've lost the art of just being normal in society, where everyone is looking to get something from everyone else. Conversations, especially professionally, can feel very transactional, and that's just not how it should be. And I don't think that's how you build a network. And I do think that's a big reason why networking feels so forced and fake. I remember back in the day, let's say 2017, 2018, in my first job, before social media, before we've had this such enormous culture shift, I had no issues building my network because at work we had trainings, we had happy hours, I had a mentor assigned to me, we would go to the holiday parties, we'd get drinks together after work. You're just making friends, and then each person ultimately would bring someone that is on their team, and your network just gradually expands because you're in an environment where you're talking to people, again, through the lens of work, but on a more personal level. So I think it's important to look at networking as just simple relationship building. The second tip here is that don't be afraid to reach out first. But if you do reach out first, you need to have a plan and be prepared. You don't want to be too formal again. And I think there's a big difference between being professional and mature and being really sterile, where the professionalism comes off so try-hardy. I think that turns people away. Again, I think the reason why networking can feel so fake is because we think it needs to be so formal, when really it should be much more casual and much more natural than you may think. So for example, on LinkedIn, where I think the networking is kind of the worst, I get so many stupid LinkedIn messages. Stupid as in people pitching me random stuff that we've never talked before. I don't know anything about them. It's just annoying. If there is someone who you want to connect with and ultimately meet in person or get on the phone with, rather than connecting them and immediately being I think people think they need to provide value first to the person by saying, I've done XYZ and I can do this and I can do this. And do you want to hop on a 15-minute call with me? Do not do that. It should be you connect with them, comment on a couple of their posts, get yourself in front of them first, and then send a message offer maybe like to buy them a coffee or send them a gift card for a coffee. And, ask a question before you're like, let's get on the phone or like, let's meet in person. Like, you have to remember that it's not necessarily that people don't want to help or don't want to build their network, but the cold stranger thing in the current online environment we're in can come off very like salesy. And so I would just approach it as being normal. And like if you were going to see somebody in the office, for example, like you may have bumped into them a few times at the water cooler or when you're both getting lunch or something before you go and get coffee. So comments and engaging with what they're posting on there can help sort of warm up the lead, we'll call it. So yeah, I think my biggest message here is to just really look at building your network as building relationships, like stay open-minded, because usually the connections that end up impacting you the most are more of those second and third degree connections in your network. So friends of friends, someone that someone else in your network knows. You never know who someone knows that could help you or be an integral part of your journey. So keep an open mind and don't be too uptight, I think, about networking. Okay, the next question here is, how do I systematize my tasks at work and stay organized? I get interrupted all the time. And also, do you have any tips for improving visibility? So I'm actually going to do, I think, a full YouTube video on this because I do get asked about this often, and I have a very specific system. It's called a task management system. It's also in my book, Own Your Career. I explain it very, very, very simply in chapter 6. But anyways, I highly recommend creating a task management system, and I'll walk through the one that I use. I was told years ago in my corporate job that I wasn't proactive, so I countered this by creating a very specific system that highlighted what I was doing, the impact it had, and how it laddered up to my goals. And I did this using the tool that I now sell. It's called the Own Your Career template. I actually am not sure if I have a video tour of it, but I have a couple of like TikToks and whatnot where I have talked about it, and I'll link the sales page. The sales page is always linked in the show notes, but I'll make sure that that's linked if you want to explore it and actually see what it looks like. But first is I would keep track of all of my weekly tasks for the week. And for each task or project that I was working on, I would also highlight the value add of that project. So what was the impact? Who was it helping? And then that way I could minimize the amount of useless work that I was doing. So if I saw that a lot of the work I was doing, I had a really hard time tying the value add to it, that would be an indicator to me of like, okay, why am I spending so much time on things that aren't really moving the needle on anything? Second is I would keep track of any follow-ups that came out of meetings or projects, and then relevant stakeholders, as well as unplanned asks and who was asking for them, as well as, again, the impact. All of this helped with better understanding what I was doing at work, who I was helping, and who I was working with the most, and ultimately helped me create a repository of everything that I was doing. So I had proof and could also go back and reference what I did and when, because you do so much at work, it's hard to remember it all. And if you're not writing it down, you're not going to remember it. This really helped me stay organized, not only with my to-dos, but to make sure I never forgot anything that was asked, because that was something that happened to me pretty often. And then I could use it to identify future opportunities to be proactive on, and I would take each project that was completed and ladder them up to my annual career goals. So it all sort of tied together in this nice, pretty sheet. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to stay organized and have a system like this to stay in the driver's seat of your workload, because when you aggregate everything, you can then use that information to advocate for yourself during important career conversations like performance reviews, during the interview process. You can use it to update your resume. So literally, like, let's say you have a whole list of things that you've done. You can take that, plug it into chat, and have chat give you impactful XYZ bullets for your resume. Again, all stuff I talk about in the book. I do have a template for this, like I mentioned. It's called the Own Your Career template, and I highly recommend checking it out, especially if you feel like you're feeling really stuck at work, or you feel like you're getting passed over for opportunities, or you want to get promoted, because not only does it give you the weekly sheet for like how to stay organized, but also a place for you to set your career goals, which I think timing wise going into 2026 would be very valuable. It gives you a whole repository of value adds and how to actually take the template and use it and leverage it during these conversations. So I recommend checking it out, because I think this was one of the biggest pain points for me in my corporate career. And once I started task tracking and managing my workflow this way, I started to get a lot more positive feedback. So I never struggled with being proactive until I was in a corporate job, and it's because I just didn't give a fuck, to be completely honest. And having a system like this helped me pretend that I cared. So I recommend it if you're similar to me. Anyways, okay. This next question here is, I want to pivot to a new career path, but I feel paralyzed with no idea what to do. So first of all, you're definitely not alone. I think everyone hits this point at least once where they wake up and they're like, I cannot keep doing this terrible job, but I also have no idea what to do next. I feel like this happened to me multiple times when I was in corporate, and it still happens to me when I'm self-employed. Really, what needs to happen though is you need to start collecting data on yourself and your current path so that you can identify what change actually needs to happen. Like, the root of a lot of change, the first step always is going to be self-reflection, what's working, what's not. So you want to pay attention to, in your day-to-day, what sparks your curiosity naturally? What are you Googling? What work do you feel drawn to? Even if it feels unrealistic, what are people coming to you for questions on? What are you really excited to talk about? Is there a job or career path that you feel envious of? These are the small breadcrumbs that will help point you in the right direction and at least give you a starting point, right? And again, if you're tracking your work, then you can more clearly identify, like, what's the work I've enjoyed? What's the work I don't like to do? How can I shift things around so that I'm getting more of what I want, less of what I don't want? The next step is to start doing something small. I think you really build momentum when you take small actions. And when we want a change, we crave this huge, enormous change and we want it to happen right away. But it doesn't have to be that serious, especially when it comes to work, because you want to make sure that the change you're making is sustainable. And honestly, when it comes to our careers, we need to be doing a little sussing out. So small steps can help iteratively get you in the right direction. So what does this look like? It could be potentially exploring consulting work, which we'll talk about. It could be volunteering. It could be starting a side hustle. Or you could just take a course or like an online class in something that interests you. Sometimes you just need to learn. Like, I feel like a lot of the reasons why people feel so stuck at work is because you're not being stimulated. Like, you're not learning new things. Your brain needs that stimulation. So sometimes your career woes could be solved by getting a hobby and having something that you're working towards outside of the office because it's stimulating your brain. If that's not working, then that does say, like, okay, maybe I do need to make a career change. And that starts with learning something new. You could shadow someone in the field that you want to be in. This is how you actually explore that interest and start to see if it's something that you even would want to pursue in a professional setting, or if you're just hung up on the idea of it. And again, maybe your woes could be solved through a hobby outside of work. Like, I genuinely think that is where most people struggle, is they have their work, they have their home life, and they don't have anything else. And so you're not getting mentally stimulated. You're not learning. Your brain needs to learn and constantly feel engaged, or you will hate your life. Like, it's very, very common. Plus, this is going to help you get some more immediate clarity, because clarity comes from action. I think paralysis is usually a result of fear and overwhelm, and that dissipates when you do things. So I always say, like, messy action's better than nothing. It's better to just try something, and if you don't like it, that's totally fine. No skin off your back. But if you do like it, it gives you a data point that you can then take action on again. And third, with this, hopefully, the clarity that you find, you can start actually taking the action steps to move closer to this new path, which is what's going to take the most amount of time. It may mean you have to take a step back, or you have to take a lateral step in your career before you can start moving forward again. But don't be afraid of being a beginner. Don't be afraid of trying something new, or maybe, again, taking a step back. And I think you can feel more empowered in these decisions when you take your financials really seriously. And I hate to keep saying it, but I'm going to. You have to calculate your fire numbers, because you would be so surprised at how much flexibility you could have when you know exactly what you need to earn, spend, and invest in order to reach these targets. We are trained that there's only one path. Work really hard, be miserable, make as much money as you can. Obviously, we all want to make as much money as possible, but you can kind of optimize a little bit for happiness in earnings when you know how much you are going to need in the future. Okay, the next question here is, how should I adjust my finances post layoff? So there are a few steps that I would take immediately if you get laid off from a financial standpoint. So first is to make sure you review your severance and insurance plans. So depending on if you get severance or what your employer is offering, you may need to enroll in COBRA for health insurance. You may be getting paid in a lump sum immediately. You need to know exactly what you get and how it's going to be delivered to you so that you can properly move that money around. So like if you get paid in a lump sum for your health insurance, you need to move that money away so that you don't accidentally spend it. If you get paid for 3 months of severance in a lump sum, you also need to move it away and sort of pay yourself again on a consistent schedule. Make sure you set the money aside for taxes should already be deducted from that, but you have to put together a little bit of a system to deploy that money so that you don't accidentally spend it and end up with nothing. Second is to enroll in unemployment. You pay into it, so collect your check and make sure you're set up to, if you do enroll in unemployment, is to deduct taxes or set money aside for taxes, because you do have to pay taxes on unemployment, and this screwed a lot of people over because they didn't know during COVID. So enroll in unemployment, collect the money that you pay into. And then next is I would review your budget, and I would really look at how you've been spending lately. If you're not tracking your expenses, now's your time to get started. What are some non-essential areas that you can temporarily cut out? If you're on a limited income or no income, I mean, if you enroll in unemployment, you get like a percentage of your salary, I believe, but it's limited. So if you're on a limited income, it really means you should be reducing, if not eliminating, non-essentials as much as possible, just in case you are out of work longer than you expect. That's a trend that has been happening, is a lot of people have been unemployed for extended periods of time. So you want to stretch your dollars as far as you possibly can. Hopefully, or ideally, you have an emergency fund that you could be drawing down from as well to supplement unemployment. And then during this time, I would be really rapidly applying to as many jobs as possible. I think you get 6 months of unemployment. So if you're unemployed for more than 6 months, then you can get a part-time job. I would also recommend looking at the earning difference between unemployment versus part-time work, because I do think that there's a lot of value to working part-time instead of collecting unemployment if the opportunity is there to earn a little bit more. Because working part-time, it puts you on a schedule, it allows you to feel like you're contributing to society, you're part of something, and you never know if it could open up an opportunity to a different career path. So I highly recommend exploring that and running the income balance or comparison of what that could look like. And then in the interim, like I would aim to just stay afloat. Like you can pause working towards financial goals while you're unemployed, obviously, and the goal would be to just not incur any additional debt during that period of time. So those are the tips that I would recommend. If you are laid off or in between jobs and you're looking for a tool and maybe like the personal finance dashboard is out of your budget, send me an email. I'm happy to work with you and give you a different type of discount, because I know that these times are really, really hard. But that's what I would do. And I would just aim to keep my expenses low as possible for as long as possible until I get back into work. Okay, next question. I'm kind of going to gloss over this. It's, how do I balance corporate and content creation or a side hustle? So I've answered this question before a couple of times, but I do get it every single time I post a Q box. So I want to acknowledge it here. And I just don't want these episodes to be repetitive. So I would recommend that you listen to episode 121, Building a 7-Figure Content Business, my strategy and best tips to start creating content, if you are interested in creating content and balancing it with your side hustle or with your corporate job. If you watch that and you have questions as a result of it, just comment on that YouTube video and I'll answer you. Or you can just send me an email. But I do think with content creation and balancing corporate, it really boils down to creating a schedule and batching your tasks. I always like to theme out my days. I still do this, and getting lots of like and similar tasks done on the same day so that you can like optimize your productivity and brain and whatnot. So those are my tips for that. And then this last question here is kind of has a longer answer. So I saved it for last. And the question is, how do I get into consulting or freelance work or freelance consulting? So this isn't a really super straightforward answer, but I'll do my best to provide guidance here on the steps to take to get started. So the first step is to really figure out and define what you can actually help with. So start listing all the skills you already get paid for. It could be writing, marketing, data analysis, design, operations, project management, whatever it is. And then ask yourself, what specific problem can I solve with this skill? Who has that problem right now, and who would actually pay for help? So, for example, if you're in marketing, maybe you can help small businesses write email campaigns. Like I think about my sister, she works at AG1 in marketing, and she builds out all of their email campaigns in Clevio or whatever. Tons of creators use that. Like that is a direct monetizable skill. If you're in finance, maybe you can help creators or entrepreneurs with budgeting and forecasting. Hello. If you are in tech or operations, maybe you can help people set up systems and workflows. Like think about the tools you use at work, and are those tools being leveraged by small businesses or by solopreneurs? And, how can you, again, leverage that skill set to solve a problem for somebody else? You don't have to reinvent or learn tons and tons of new skills. You just have to package what you already know into a service. And usually at work, you are developing a lot of monetizable skills that can be leveraged in the freelance market. The second step is to think about and create a super simple offer. I recommend only one. You want it to be tangible. You want it to be easy to say yes to. So you can start with one of these frameworks. First would be a done for you. So this is when you execute something for someone else. So like an email funnel, like you can do done for you email funnels where you write an entire sequence for someone. Next could be a done with you. So this would be advising or strategizing alongside someone. So an example would be like social media management or something. And then a strategy only would be a consultation or an audit or a coaching session where you are helping someone and walking them through their thought process or a problem or something, so then they can take that and implement it on their own. So pick one, price it, and that will help make it feel really real. And you can start by writing out your like value add or help statement. So it would be like, I help XYZ do whatever through whatever you do. Okay, that's your positioning statement. Highly recommend using ChatGPT to help you suss all of this out. The next step is to set up your online presence. So it could be a home-based website, it could be a LinkedIn page, it could be a Notion page or document where you outline your offer. It could be a simple landing page. You can use Durable, you can use Teachable, you can use Squarespace. It could be an Instagram page if that's what you want. The goal is to have credibility. It's to have some sort of presence so that people will think this is a legitimate thing and I'm not getting scammed. Like that is very, very, very important. And then you want to start socializing that you're doing something, right? So that could be, again, posting content, which I recommend you do. It could be starting with your closest network. So generally speaking, your first few clients will almost always come from people who already know you one way or another. So you can let your network know, maybe with a LinkedIn post or something, that you are doing some freelance work and you're taking on new clients. You can talk about it a little bit with your circle of friends or with your professional network in person at happy hours, whatever. You'll be shocked at how quickly people respond and say they might know someone because, again, most people like need help with things. They're just not always entirely sure what they need help with. And it's very intimidating to, and I'm saying this from my own experience, like it's very intimidating to go and seek it out because you don't really know what you're going to get. And then the next step here would be to make sure that you underpromise and overdeliver. So this is kind of like the last step. Once you get a client or a couple of clients, the goal is to do really exceptional work for them. Go above and beyond, even if you feel like you're going way above what they're paying you. You want to do really, really good work so that you can get testimonials and have good word of mouth. Word of mouth is literally everything. You can collect case studies. You can use that to showcase the work that you're capable of doing. You can go back and do surveys and ask them questions and see, what were you missing? What could I do better on? This is how you build proof, and ultimately that builds to a bigger network of clients. So I would really recommend, I know people suggest using like a Fiverr and an Upwork. I honestly don't suggest that. I would really recommend going to your network first, leveraging again the power of social media, like a LinkedIn page. If it's intimidating to you to use your current LinkedIn, just make a new one. Make a new one, okay? And start from scratch. It's not as hard as you think. I started my LinkedIn from scratch, and start an Instagram page or a TikTok and put yourself out there, because if you do really want to take freelancing seriously and you want to get clients, like, you have to have a way to communicate and get in front of people, and social media is the way that you're going to do that. Like, I genuinely don't know how else someone would build a business in the current market without having at least some presence on social. But your skill that you're monetizing doesn't have to be a creator skill. You don't have to be making content about your routines. You could just be on an Instagram page. Like, a great example, my friend Lucy came on a couple of months ago, Lucy Badui. And she has a page called My Right Hand Woman where she sells copywriting services. She did all the copy on my personal finance dashboard page, my basic budgeting page. And she has a very small Instagram where she just talks about her ability to copyright. And that's how she markets her business. She does very, very well. Like, it doesn't have to be a big whole fancy thing. You don't have to have a bajillion followers, but you do have to find a way to find leads. And it's easier than ever now with the power of social media. So anyways, those are my questions for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Hopefully you learned something. If you have follow-up questions, career questions you want me to answer in the future, feel free to leave a comment. And I hope you enjoyed. Thanks so much for listening, and I will catch you in the next one. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to leave me a review. Make sure to follow me on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. And if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you next week.